Today, at the F1 in Schools World Finals, Tom eats more of his gifts. The starting gates are working better, but still aren't perfect. And we see teams get slower as the temperatures decrease. You're listening to Trackside by Off the Track. Hello and welcome to episode 2 for day 2 of the F1 in Schools 2022 World Finals coverage by Trackside, by Off the Track. My name is Michael. I'm joined today by Joao. Joao, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hello everyone. So yes, I'm Joao. I'm from Brazil. I have been part of Hydra, a collaboration team between Brazil and Mexico in 2019 World Finals.
And I realise now that I actually forgot to mention my teams, but that's fine. We'll just keep moving on. I was part of Infinitude and Precision Racing, if anyone remembers Precision Racing, which no one will. But anyway, there were some memorable moments at the competition today, that's for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I think the best place to start is with the starting gates or the gates in general. We know that yesterday there were a lot of issues with the gates, a lot of DNFs. I think today far fewer DNFs from what we can see. I think it's only 3 for today, thereabouts. And so a much smaller amount of DNFs. However, we did have an issue where a team ran a 1.004 time. I believe the team was Atos Racing.
Yes.
Yeah. And so the starting gates, or the gates, reported a 1.004 time. And Gary Anderson, chair of judges, eventually decided that that time was not legitimate and they had to rerun it. The subsequent rerun got a time of, I think it was 1.5 or 1.6, something like that. And so I feel really bad for Atos Racing. I don't know about you, Joao.
Yeah.
It's
pretty
must
tough.
be rather crushing because they just got very close. I think I was talking to Ben on the live stream about it. We think it's the closest anyone's got to that barrier in 4 years since Horizon.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, do you think we can trust the timing gates now? Sure.
Yeah, it's quite rough. Like the timing gates had been a topic like from day 1 and day 2. Yeah, at least we have a more smooth sailing day, so we do not have many delays. That is great, especially for the teams that are on site. We talked yesterday with Sonic Boom, like their race time was rescheduled 4 times during the day because of delays, because of online teams. So when everything is on schedule, it's far easier to handle the pressure, to plan your things, what you do, your interviews. So this is a good team. Like I'm happy for HQ that they did it all right. So no more DNFs, no more changing the stop system. But that one time is like is a little bit cheeky because you crush someone's like emotion. Like you're so happy to see that you have made a great time.
And I mean, yeah, it's not that HQ's fault, and I don't want anyone to think it is.
No, it isn't.
I think HQ has been doing an amazing job.
For sure.
Especially today. Today was very well put together. Tom was on his A game. I think it's probably one of the best days we've seen in the competition in terms of entertainment value. The teams are really comfortable, whether they're on the screen or whether they're in person. Yeah. And I think the race times are being handled really well. The breakages are being handled as well as they can be, you know.
Yep.
But those starting gates, I don't know, if I was a competitor, I would be really distrustful of those timing gates, because
for sure,
not registering a car finishing is one thing, but registering an incorrect time, I think that kind of underscores the trust you have that the gates are accurate.
Yeah, I think like if yesterday's problems didn't have happened, was okay, we would be like, okay, it's one off. So, but since we have a history, a sort of history in the World Finals with the stopping dates, or the timing, so yeah, this may be something to keep an eye. But I hope that for knockouts, when the stakes are high, is like one off. I hope that no problem tomorrow, and we can just enjoy the competition normally.
Well, I think we're going to be just trying to enjoy the competition, because knockouts this year is not for points, unfortunately. Or some teams may find that to be fortunate. But yes, I'm certainly looking forward to it. I hope all the teams are. And so we were talking earlier, Joao, about the kind of consistency we've seen in cars, and I think the leaderboard really shows how consistent and how close all of the cars are. You know, if you look, the top 22 times fall within 9/10 of each other, 9/10 of a second of each other, by the looks of it, from today's net times leaderboard. And so a lot of the cars we're seeing are really, really consistent. Yes, that's including reactions, yeah. And so there's some teams, Blackout, they're showing quite a good consistency. When we look at their times, the standard deviation on their times is 0.023 of a second, which is not the lowest, but when we look at the actual average lap, they're on top. And so we had an interview prior to the World Finals with Blackout, where we discussed their wheel system and how they have a very unique wheel system from what I've seen, in that they've got 2 bearings on each wheel, and connecting them is a stub axle. What did you think, Joao, when you first heard about that?
Yeah, when I first heard, I was quite trying to understand how it works, like how you put 2 bearings in one wheel. But then I understand. I heard what they said, and it's like quite interesting. Like you are doing like a backup to your system. So imagine that one bearing is not working at ideal, you have the other one compensating. So this might be a way that they're keeping like their times very, very close to each other.
And so I think we'll hear from Blackout now, and we'll have a quick discussion about what Blackout's done right after this.
So in the car, we can say we have a primary bearing and the secondary bearing. So the primary bearing is held in the wheel, just like you'd find on sort of most wheel systems. Then that's an interference fit or a press fit, so secured to the wheel and the bearing. Then again, it's another press fit onto the stub axle. So the 2 bearings go into the stub axle. So then to connect the wheel to the actual car, then we've got this sort of housing. Again, that's another press fit as well. And then we had to make sure that the tolerances were right, so it doesn't just fall apart when racing.
And so, in terms of actually achieving that press fit, do you use heat or anything to expand parts so that they'll shrink to hold things together, or how do you achieve a precise press fit?
There's no sort of heat things, but we did have these sort of assembly jigs that utilized a screw-on system that Cavill could go in further detail, and that just allowed us to assemble it more precisely without reducing the damage done to the bearings. I mean, Cavill, do you want to add on to that?
So a main difficulty that we found while trying to assemble the bearing while trying to assemble the entire system, was getting the bearings attached to the wheel and then onto the car. So we had to develop these sort of jigs which would initially attach the 2 bearings onto the stub axle, and then using a sort of screw mechanism would then attach the wheel onto the primary bearing. And then we could then use this sort of wheel assembly to then use another sort of jig assembly to then attach the entire sort of wheel onto the car, trying to reduce as much damage as possible.
And so I think, Joao, you can agree that that's a very interesting way of looking at it. I don't think it's mentioned in what we just listened to, but when I was speaking to them, they mentioned that it's a way of taking out some of the friction in that system, because your stub axle allows your wheels to rotate so much more freely, because you don't have a joined axle, and it's not just one bearing, there's two. So it's a really smooth way of having your wheel system turn. And so I think it's really borne out in how the car's performed. You know, I'm looking at this, and out of the 8 times we've recorded, half of them are within, 4 thousandths of a second of each other.
It's insane.
It's a very, very well-designed car. It's not the fastest, but it is one of the most consistent. And I think consistency is a really good thing. They're showing well in the average lap. They may not have got the fastest time, but they're showing well on the leaderboard as well.
And I think that the consistency is very important for knockouts as well, that we have tomorrow, day 3.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you don't have 4 races to show your car. You have 2 races, 1 with each. So you need to have a car that is reliable to deliver time after time. Even if has done 8 races, you need to push the limits of your car. So you need to be fit to do the times, time after time, a good time. Don't need to be the best, but if you have the car that in day 1 you crash the times and it go down with the races, this is a bad thing. Like, you cannot fully take the potential of your car.
And I'm looking at Eclipse's results here today, and you know what? Until we got until the first 2 races of today are real outliers from their normal race times, because obviously Eclipse, they are currently the fastest car. They currently have the fastest lap at the competition, and they're running, consistent 1.05 times. They've got a 1.08, a 1.09, and then we jump up to a 1.133 and a 1.243, and that was for the first 2 races today. And I was speaking to Tom earlier offline. Well, actually, it was online, but not on the record. It's important distinction there.
It's been a long day. It's been a long day, Michael.
Yeah, and I think the conclusion they drew was that it was the car just needed to get back into it. The car needed to warm up the bearings, I suppose you could say. Amy on the stream has said similar things, that she's a believer in cars needing to warm up their bearings. What do you think about that, Joao?
Yeah, I think like we can see sometimes cars go slowly and then rapidly they improve the time. So yeah, isn't ideal, but it's something that happens. So you need to be prepared to this and handle it, because for the big points that are awarded for your car, you don't take the lowest time, you don't take the highest time, you take like the average, what you can do consistently. So if you have a one-off time that is pretty good and one-off time that is pretty bad, it doesn't make a difference if you have an average. The core of your points are good.
And so that's why Blackout is going to do so well in that section, because they have a very consistent car, and Eclipse, their car has been a bit inconsistent. They've got that fastest time that won't count towards the Grand Prix, and their middle times that we look at, they're good, but they're not as consistent as Blackouts would be 1.05 time, 1.05 for all 4 of them. Whereas Eclipse, they've got half of them that are around that 1.05 mark, and then the other half are about 1.08, 1.09.
It's still good. So it's still good, but
it's still good. Oh yeah, I'm not diminishing the engineering work that's gone into Eclipse's car. It is one of the most heavily tested cars I have ever seen.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think it's one of the best cars that I've seen. But I think Blackout deserves credit where credit is due. That wheel system, I'm amazed by it. I think it's a brilliant wheel system. I think there needs to be more research into double bearing wheel systems in the future.
Yeah, and it's something that will help them also in the engineering part of the judging of the engineering, because they must have a reason. They probably had tested with 1 bearing, with 2 bearings, and they decided that it's best. It's the same thing that Eclipse did. Like, many hours of testing will result in a good car and a good engineering process in a whole.
Yes, and I think Eclipse was absolutely right in their testing focus to focus on the stability of the car. And so for those who missed yesterday's episode, Eclipse have a metal rear wing, and that helps to shift the center of mass for more in line with the center of the thrust vector for the canister. And so that enables them to have a very stable takeoff and to take advantage of all the energy provided by the canister at the start, because you really need to harness that energy, because it doesn't happen throughout the race. It's only for about the first quarter of the track, I believe, that you have that kind of thrust from the canister. And so their approach is to really capture that energy, and Blackout's approach is to really minimize the losses in the wheel system. And so I think an approach between the two would yield an amazing car. And so consistency is key, not just in marketing, but in engineering. And so for knockouts next year, I believe it's got to count.
We hope.
They've got to have knockouts that count at some point. And so I think if teams want to do well in knockouts, I agree, Joao, they need to be consistent. And so I think that brings us on to our very own Markus Vetter. Markus has been with Off the Track since the last World Finals, in which he worked with us doing interviews, and he did a really good job, and we love having Markus as part of the team. And he had the opportunity to speak at the F1 in Schools World Finals. And Joao, how would you describe his speech?
Yeah, I think it was a very solid speech. Like in my World Finals, we also had someone that participated in other World Finals talking, and I remember that experience. The experience was pretty great. Like, you are in the World Finals, and the guy who's speaking to you knows what it is to be in your place. And even though that you see that Michael didn't win the World Finals, obviously he had an amazing project working for years, as he talked in the presentation. You can see that the F1 schools opened many doors for him, and he pushed that. He followed that what he wants. So yeah, it's fantastic.
And it was part of the Williams Engineering Academy is what he's part of now, and I think that's what he was there to promote. And so unfortunately, they're not taking anyone this year at the competition. I'm not sure the reasons behind that. It's a bit disappointing, because it seems to have been a really good opportunity for Markus, and it seems to really be helping him. Joao, did you try for the Williams Engineering Academy?
No, I didn't, but I kind of regret it. But at the time, I wasn't working in the engineering with a car. Nowadays, I was. But if I was going to do the project again, I will probably try to be a part of it, because it opens many doors.
I didn't either because I was a graphics designer at the time, but if I had have done the competition again and I hadn't been able to be a graphics designer, because I think if I do the competition again I would be a graphics designer again, because I really love that job, I think I would have been an engineer and I would have done the Williams Racing Academy. I think it's a brilliant opportunity, and I'm glad that Williams have stepped up and started providing that opportunity to teams.
Yeah, and I remember the challenge that was in my year. It was a fun challenge. Like I think was how to improve a pit stop, if I'm not mistaken. Like you have to submit something. So it's a fun thing. It's an idea you need to think about. So yeah, we hope that for next year's next World Finals we'll have Williams back doing this, because it's a very, very good opportunity.
Yes, a great opportunity. And so I think that's most of the big points out of the way. I think from a statistical viewpoint, today was a lot slower than yesterday. And not just the net times, because they've got reactions, but the track times as well. And I think Lawrence did outline why on stream that it was slower. Is because it was colder, and so the atmosphere in the venue was more dense, and that meant that the cars were going a bit slower. The canisters weren't as warm, I think, as well.
Yes.
They weren't able to heat up as quickly, though I'm not sure how much of an effect that has. So in the end of it, only 14 out of 53 teams managed to improve their times. And Joao, I'm not too surprised by that for the pure reason that we've had so many breakages, and the breakages continue today.
Yeah, I think it's rare when your car breaks and it goes faster, right? When it happens, you say, okay, Gary fixed it and made it faster, but normally it goes a little bit slower because you add glue to the weight. Normally, if you break many times, you add glue with glue. So it's weight. And even though Gary's a very great guy gluing, you never put in the right place, the precise right place. Even more if you have to glue more than one time, because you are gluing in glue. So the time tends to be slower, and the temperature was colder. So it was nothing that we can do.
I don't think that's on Gary for not putting them in the right place. I mean, this guy's got to fix these cars quickly, you know. But so I think also when you look at it, the cars, they start to wear out by that point as well, and so we weren't going to expect a lot of teams to improve. But I think in the second day of racing, generally we see a bit more than a quarter of teams improve their time, and so the about a quarter we've got this time is a bit, but it is what it is, and so I think. Is there anything else we need to cover?
I don't think so. I think we need to congratulate the teams for the second day of competition. Now,
absolutely amazing efforts.
Now it's mainly just fun. Just try to relax, because knockouts doesn't count. So you go there, cheer for your country. If you are competing, cheer for yourself. If you have a team from your country competing, cheer for them. Feel the moment. Stay there. Watching the races, because it's the spectacle of F1 in schools, definitely the knockouts.
Absolutely, and knockouts was an amazing experience for me. I think my team made it through to to the quarterfinals, or maybe the semis. I can't remember, but I remember it being a very nerve-wracking experience. But that's because there were points at stake. So just enjoy it. As Joao said, I think what you've said, Joao, very sage advice. I think that's basically all judging done, though, is it not?
Yes, I think so. I don't know, isn't it scheduled, but you might receive feedbacks of the judging. I don't know if it's today or the next day, but it's very important, especially if you want to come back to the World Finals in some year, or if your school has teams that are starting now, so you have your feedback. It's very important to pass forward, to always improve your school, your country in the World Finals, and to make the environment at all more competitive, so you have more teams fighting for the win.
Absolutely, and I think it's no secret that Australia is very strong when it comes to F1 in schools, and there's a couple of schools that do particularly well at it. My old high school was one of those. We had, I think, 4 or 5 world's teams, and we had 2 world's champion teams from our school. And I think that is in no small part to the amount of knowledge that's passed down between the different teams, student to student. I think if you want to become more confident in your current knowledge and you want to help others succeed, there's no better way to do that than to mentor your fellow F1 in school students at your school. Whether you've left school already because the competition's been delayed, or you're leaving school soon, I think mentoring F1 in school students is a really valuable opportunity, and absolutely you should take that up. So I think that concludes Trackside for today. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you, Joao, for coming on.
Thank you.
And good luck to all the teams. Sit back, relax. Judging's done. It's fun, all fun here on out.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Good luck and have a good day.